Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all good. And as always, hope you can all hear me. Got quite a bit to cover tonight. Sorry, I just caught my finger on the desk. Got quite a bit to cover tonight, which hopefully will be interesting for you. We've got a bit of news. We're going to talk about SBF as his court case kind of started today. We'll go into that. We will also have a look at Research Token, which is Render Network for this week. We'll have a look at price action, which has been pretty crazy. Crazy, in inverted commas. It's been very up and down, perhaps a better way of rephrasing that, over the last couple of days. We'll just kind of see where all that sits. As always, guys, you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be periodic looking back that way. And other than that, let's just crack on with everything. Right. I just realized my camera was super zoomed in then. Anyway, so, yep, looks like we had a hell of a move up at the end of the weekend. Bitcoin was sort of, meandering in and around sort of 26,700. And then we shot up and we kind of got as high as almost 8,600 yesterday. But it closed much closer to around about 27.3, 4, should I say. And we're seeing that the continuation, the drop down, is going further and further. So yeah, we'll just have to see where that's moving along. Now, the Dixie has been on a continued rip, and I'm just going to drop it onto the weekly. We covered this last week. We're actually in the 12th green candle in a row, which is pretty crazy. We're in this zone that we kind of identified last week as where we think it may go to. Now, we've still got 3 and a bit days before this one closes. But it'll be interesting to see where this closes this week, and then whether or not we start to feel that turnaround. I mean, 12 weeks, that's 3 months of climbing, ever since we breached that 100, which is just, pretty impressive. Going back to the daily, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, they've had some interesting ones today. And for any of you that use Telegram, I have this one, the Financial World Updates, and this popped up. And this is the NASDAQ. I mean, this is today. It is a blood red day, isn't it? This is kind of what we see in crypto bear markets. But you can kind of see the NASDAQ, the S&P, they're all feeling pain at the moment. Definitely seems like we are in a transition or a reversal back down after reaching those highs a few weeks ago. Can't really say too much about it, but it's just one certainly to keep an eye on. Now, previously, we've always talked about that correlation between the NASDAQ, the S&P, and Bitcoin, but actually doesn't really seem to be playing out that way at the moment. So something to watch, and as I say, keep an eye on there. Casper. So Casper's, I suppose, in a bit of a holding pattern more than anything else. A week or two ago, it made its all-time high around about 52. I say 52, 5 cents. You know what I mean? Pulled back, and then it's climbed back up. And I thought maybe we were going to go on a bit of a run of it. But actually, we saw, yes, it did climb on Sunday, but yesterday with the rest of the market, it's pulled back down. It's doing slightly better than most today, but as we know, still got 5 hours to go in the candle. Plenty of time for that to change, but certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on. We'll go into price action in a little bit more detail later on. Hey, Stu, Erjan, Mo, Heather Anita. Yep, I'm going to talk about profit taking, but I've got some even better news for that one a little bit later on. Hey there, Chris, and hey there, MK. Hope you're all doing well. If you just joined, don't forget, if you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat. I'll try and go through them as best and as quickly as I can. But looking into the news, and this seems like quite a while ago, but actually it was just last week. The SEC did confirm that the spot ETFs were going to be delayed for BlackRock, Invesco, and Bitwise. So the deadline date was actually the middle of October. But if you remember, it was a non-event again. We were worried, but the US were having concerns that they were not going to raise the debt ceiling or not going to sort of increase spending, and they were going to have a government shutdown, which would have actually taken effect on Sunday over the weekend. And so the SEC came out on Friday. Well, it started on Thursday, but then it announced BlackRock's on Friday to just confirm that they have delayed the spot Bitcoin ETF decisions. It's kind of a blanket delay, and that's just kicked the can further down the road. I won't necessarily go through the article, but as I said here, they were due anywhere between the 16th and the 19th of October, but we actually got them at the end of September. And the paragraph below kind of insinuates that that was due to the US government shutdown potentially taking place on Sunday. They just wanted to get that out of the way. But where's it disappeared to? Don't necessarily need that one. That's just someone else confirming. Is there? Here we go. So where does that leave us now? What we're looking at here is a list of all of the active spot ETFs. Now, ARK21 is the front runner, if you will. That one was announced first. And they are slightly ahead. Now, I would just take these dates in the third column with a pinch of salt, because I can't guarantee that they are that, but I've seen some that say it might be in the 17th of January 2024 for the next deadline. But whether or not, it's going to be in and around mid-January 2024. And that's the next time frame that we're really looking towards. So we've got the Christmas period to get by. No reason why they might not announce it earlier, but likelihood that they're going to stick pretty close to these timescales. And then after that, the final deadline, absolutely must make a decision, is still around about mid-March, which we've talked about before, tying in quite nicely. We're about a month just prior to the halvening. So we shall see. But as we know, they have been delayed as of last week. Sticking with ETFs, always do that. What has been quite interesting is that Grayscale is planning to submit an SEC filing to convert its Ethereum trust into a spot ETF. Now, we have seen Ethereum futures be approved, but this would be the first instance of a spot ETF. Grayscale obviously feeling relatively comfortable or confident that perhaps the narrative overall has changed, and so they're getting their application in. I'm surprised it's the first one we've actually seen. I think it's the first that we've actually seen for this, but it is where we are with that. So just to kind of cover a bit of the article, following the approval of the first Ether futures exchange traded fund, Grayscale Investment is looking to convert the Grayscale Ethereum Trust to a spot Ether exchange traded fund. Bloody hell, Harry, put your teeth back in. Fund. The New York Stock Exchange ARCA filed for the conversion with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission on the 2nd of October, so yesterday. Grayscale's existing trust invested Ether futures contracts as an indirect means of exposure to Ether, but a spot ETF will invest in the underlying asset itself. And then it just goes on to talk about it. But what was quite interesting with this, I don't know if they did it for Bitcoin Spot ETFs. So if they have and you think they did, then obviously please let me know. But Van Eyck have actually released 2 commercials about Ethereum ETFs, which I do think is quite interesting. I certainly had not heard of commercials, as they call them in America, for this sort of thing, but perhaps it is. So yeah, investment manager Van Eyck had fired up the marketing engine for its upcoming Ether futures exchange traded fund. So this is the futures one now, which some expect to have launched as of yesterday. So they released 2 Enter the Ether themed TV commercials, revealing it to the Ethereum strategy ETF. The ticker is EFUT, and it's coming soon. So I don't know if these are going to play, but let's have a look. So this is the first one. I don't know if you can hear the sound, but let me know if you can't. So yeah, I don't have much to say about this one. There's some. Oops, gotta stop this one otherwise. Bit of a smaller ad there, but yeah. So they're the two adverts that come out. I just thought it was kind of interesting that was the narrative that they were moving along with. So let's actually now get on to talk about what may likely dominate news for the next at least 6, if not 8 weeks. And that's Sam Bankman-Fried. His trial, I mean, some will say it officially starts today, but it's due to formally get underway tomorrow. So today, as of today, the 3rd of October, it's actually jury selection. Now, I was following a little bit of that, not in terms of individual jurors, but the news that was coming out from them. And the courtrooms are not allowing computers or mobile, so it's kind of like drip fed in the break. So if you're trying to follow it, it's fairly mundane. But it was taking apparently quite long, longer than anticipated, and the jury selection may go into tomorrow, which I suppose may push everything back by 24 hours. But as you can imagine, both the prosecutors and the defense get an opportunity to choose the jury panel of, I suppose, 12 male and females. I don't know if they have replacements and alternatives. I don't know. But yeah, so that's going on at the moment. But let's assume it gets settled today. The court case itself will take place as of tomorrow. It's due to run for around about 6 weeks. Hence why we'll be talking about it for that long. And then obviously the jury will go away. But we kind of think that probably by Thanksgiving, so last Thursday in November, we'll likely have an outcome of Sam Bankman's first trial. We'll go through this trial in a moment, but just bear in mind that he's actually got a second criminal trial scheduled for March 2024. So regardless of the outcome of this one, he will have a second trial next year. So very, very, very quick kind of run through of how we've got to where we've got to. If you remember, back end of last year, there was a leaked document which basically called into question the finances of Alameda Research. Alameda Research had a very close link within FTX. People got spooked. Everyone started trying to withdraw their funds. FTX didn't have the funds available for the withdrawals, so they had to put a freeze on those. Long story short, they went for a buyout with Binance. Binance weren't interested, and so they went into administration about November last year. Now, at the time, they'd gone into administration, but the more comical side of it was Sam Bankman-Fried was still a free man. And so he decided to do some sort of like whirlwind press tour, going on all sorts of chat shows. Well, not chat shows, but you know what I mean. Some sort of debate forums, and trying to explain. This was, like global news. What had gone on, pleading his innocence and his ignorance and everything else that went with it. I suppose trying to curry some favor. That obviously failed. I think most people will agree that didn't sit well with people. The information that he provided was either just later proven to be false or just actually dug the hole even deeper. And so he was arrested in the Bahamas, I think in December of last year. And we'll go through the charges in a little bit of time. But ultimately, because he was based in the Bahamas, they arrested him. The US then wanted to charge him, so they extradited him in the beginning of last year, started to pull their case together, and they filed for their case in March of 2023. Since then, Sam's been living, a dual life, I suppose, because up until recently, he was under house arrest, staying at his mum and dad's. And, I wouldn't say he was going about his life. I'm sure he had his angle base and everything else. But there were rumors and concerns that he was trying to witness tamper, and he also did some pretty sketchy stuff with his ex-girlfriend's diary and publicly releasing, snippets from that. Maybe just trying to discredit her, and we'll go on to why in a moment. Anyway, after enough breaches of his bail agreements, the judge decided to revoke his bail. And at the time, just bear in mind that his bail was set at the highest bail ever, $250 million. But he was then sent to, I don't think it's prison, I don't necessarily know, but a holding facility, if you will, until the trial commences. And obviously, whilst he's going to be in the trial. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. Yeah, there's loads of details, sort of that have come up. But what is interesting is obviously what is going to happen. There's, we've all had a look at sort of the bankruptcy hearings and everything else that's come out from it. And I think a lot of people have kind of concluded that this was just an absolute calamity of a company, masquerading itself as a big powerhouse. And so there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of, lack of understanding. And so the fact that we're actually going to see Sam Bankman, well, actually, we might not see Sam Bankman-Fried on the stands, but we're going to see experts on the stands trying to explain exactly what's gone on. And I think this could have a huge impact on the crypto space, just what's likely to be very negative stuff that's going to come out. That could obviously scare retail again. It could just put into question some other actions that have taken place. May even call into question some concerns about other exchanges. We've talked about Binance in the past. And perhaps, Sam got screwed over by CZ. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to dig the knife in. I'm speculating here. But what's more important is we are going to get the dirt on sort of what really went on and the running of this company. Now, Sam wasn't the only one that was arrested. His two co-founders of FTX, Gary Wang, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name, Nissan, someone, I can't remember. I'm sure I'll find it in the article. Got arrested, as well as the ex-CEO of Alameda Research, his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison. Now, the other three pled guilty pretty quickly, and they have actually been working with the government for several months now. And so what is interesting is they are obviously going to appear as witnesses. And what most people want to know is, are they going to try and throw Sam under the bus? You know, how are they going to explain that relationship between FTX and Alameda? And the two colleagues of Sam's, Gary and Nissan, you know, they were like CTO and the chief, so they were the technical officer and the chief engineer. So they're going to understand about the coding and the relationships, the supposed relationship between FTX and Alameda, and how potentially this commingling of client funds was utilized. So I think a lot of that stuff's going to be very interesting to come out. Let's just have hey there, Bijan. They filmed that. Yeah, I don't know where they filmed it, but you know, these marketing people, they do like that. Santa has gone through chemo and is now shilling Ethereum ETFs. An odd advert. Yeah, that is true. More negativity could hurt Solana too, potentially. I think Solana's yes, it had bad reputation because FTX and Sam allegedly sort of propped that up quite heavily, and you know, a lot of the supposed backed assets were in Solana, and that fell hard. Whether or not it's been able to sever the ties, I mean, I don't see many articles now sort of having that positive link between FTX and Solana. So, you know, maybe they've managed to shrug that off, but maybe this might bring it into people's mindset again. And like you say, maybe it will cause it there. I'm not going to go through what happened in the FTX. I kind of covered a lot of that stuff. So the 7 counts, I've actually got so he's currently got 7 counts for the trial, but I've got somewhere where they are, what they are. So bear with me. Here we go. So the charges, so 7 counts that he is facing at the moment. He's got conspiracy to commit wire fraud on customers of FTX, the wire fraud of customers itself on FTX, conspiracy to commit wire fraud on the lenders of Alameda Research, wire fraud on the lenders of Alameda Research, conspiracy to commit fraud on customers of FTX in connection with the purchase and sales of derivatives, conspiracy to commit securities fraud on investors in FTX, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. So I think the key thing there to try and understand is, obviously there's 5 conspiracies and there's 2 actual cases of wire fraud. So the wire frauds are, you know, those 2 are he actually did it, and they're going to try and prove that he did that. The conspiracy ones are he was planning to do it, he was involved within it, and they just need to prove that he had some knowledge of that and was a willing participant within it. Don't know whether or not that's easier or harder to prove. I'm not here to suggest either way, but that's where the initial counts are going to be. Now, there's a lot of talk about, you know, if he is found guilty, and just to bear in mind, obviously, with how this case, the judge has been quite vocal over the last few days about, you know, what prosecutors and defenders can and can't bring up in court. Also gone into what they expect of the jury and everything else. And one of the things is that all 12 need to find him, you know, make a unanimous decision on all of the counts separately, of course, but they all need to come back as either guilty or not guilty. I imagine if they don't, the judge will probably send them back again to give them a bit more time. I don't know how many times they do that before they decide, right, okay, that can't be met that way. But one of the other things that people have been talking about is the length of time he could potentially spend in prison. And so here are this from the Department of Justice. And these are the 7 charges. Don't know why I didn't just get this one up, but it's got the maximum sentence here. So as you can see, there's potentially up to 110 years. However, and to be clear, these wouldn't be served back to back. If he was found guilty on all of them, they'd be served, what's the term, consecutively? No, they'd be served at the same time. So it's likely actually that if he got found guilty and the maximum sentence, he's probably only going to see only 20 years in prison. Of these 7, as I said, there's another case to come at the end, and we know that there was 13 charges originally. Some of them had to be dropped from a technicality point of view because effectively, which one was it? Oh, that was it. The big one that was dropped, which is quite interesting. was all about the political donations. Now, they wanted to charge him for that, but the Bahamian, I don't know, the authorities in the Bahamas only extradited him on the original 7 charges. They didn't extradite him on the political funds donations. Now, he's alleged to have donated up to $100 million in political funds. So they're not going for some sort of conspiracy for meddling with political outcomes or whatever the term would be. I don't know. But as I said, the judge has actually already been quite open about what they can discuss. And they've told the prosecutor and the defense that they are allowed to speak to him about his political contributions, because that may unlock where some of these funds have come from, but also give a measure of his character. So I think we're going to find a lot of information on there, which I think will be quite interesting, especially running up into an election year. But as I said last week, I'm going to look to try and cover what happens each week in a little segment, and for as long as the trial lasts. So we'll see how well the information flows out. I was hoping, I mean, I don't know, maybe we can. You'll be able to actually view some of it live, a bit like you could with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard kind of thing. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not that's the case. But I'll try and bring you as much of an update as I possibly can. Just going back, because I think so yeah, the list of people who testify, I mean, they've got loads of experts, and as I went through and watched a few things, they sound very experty in who they are. What was interesting, I think for a lot of things, is the defense team, they put 7 names forward. There we go, sorry. So it's Gary Wang and it's Nasheed Singh. They were the other people that were charged. But as it says here, they're cooperating witnesses. The defense tried to put forward 7 witnesses. I think the judge kind of rejected them all outright, basically saying that, you know, that what they would bring would be called into question in terms of, like, they're probably just going to muddy the evidence and they're not experts in what it is. So I think they are allowed to bring 4 of them just as character witnesses, but in terms of actually testifying on specifics of, you know, individual, I don't know, coding and all that kind of stuff, they're probably not allowed to, or anything they say, maybe the jurors have to dismiss. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting one in terms of just finding out a lot of information about that. I think it's, you know, it's been such a popular is probably a poor choice of words. It's been such a highly public case that's finally now going to trial. I think it's going to draw attention, not just from crypto news. I've got a feeling that mainstream media will cover this as well. Maybe not initially, but anything that's particularly juicy, I have a feeling that yes, they probably will. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got to say about it. I've got a little note here saying that my bitrate is down. How's the stream looking? Is it jumpy or anything else, or can I continue? Anyway, we'll continue until someone tells me otherwise. If you're interested yourself, CoinDesk seems to do, you know, they do podcasts every day. They do small snippet videos. I'll post a link for you, but you can get the full coverage from this webpage as well. And there's loads of different mini articles if you're that way inclined. Okay, that's just the trial and what to explain. I think I kind of summarized all of that. We've gone through the rest, so perfect. I think that kind of covers all of the news. I don't think there's any other questions. Okay, perfect. Oh, it's parents. It'll be interesting to see if they have to be called as witnesses, because we know that they were gifted for services quite a large amount of money as well as property, which I know that what you call them, the administrators, whatever the American version of the administrators, they're trying to sort of get those assets back so they can then pass that back on to customers and the like. But anyway, we shall see. Right, moving on. I just want to, someone in Discord, doesn't necessarily matter who, reached out to me after the trading pub last week, about some of the comments that I made on Casper. And I actually thought I made a mistake, and so I just wanted to clarify. It doesn't necessarily change the outlook and the comments that I wanted to make, but, you know, just in case anyone puts any stock and credence into what I had to say. And what we were talking about, if you remember, was the potential for where Casper can get to in the market. And I was effectively saying that, you know, it currently has a market cap of 1 billion, and to get to that 2.5% of the overall market cap is not that particularly much of a leap. But the problem is, and this is why you should never do maths live, is in my head, although I know what a trillion is, and we're currently at $1 trillion, in my head, I was calculating it as 100 billion. So I was thinking that Casper already had 1% of the market cap. So when I was looking at it to say get to 2.5%, I was like, look, it doesn't have to go that far to get to 2.5%. And obviously that's not the case. You know, Casper is 0.1. It's actually under 0.1% of the market cap. So it's got like nearly a 30x to necessarily get to that. Bearing in mind, it's already done a 250x in the last 12 months alone. To get another 30x to get to, you know, it's probably more than that, isn't it? It's going to be, it's at 5 cents now, it's 20. It's a hell of a lot more. It's like 160x to get to that 420 or whatever that Simon's got there. That whilst not impossible, and the case was made with ADA and what that did in the last bull run, you know, the reality of that is probably less than what I led it on to be. So, you know, for me, I would more sit comfortably at 42 cents. You know, it's just 10x from its current position and around about 25% of the market cap. So that for me seems like a sort of a more of a logical place to be. And, you know, let's just have a look. So what I've done is I've gone on to CoinMarketCap at the height of the market. Now, Bitcoin, they only do it weekly, so I can't get the exact date, but you can look and see that Bitcoin back in the 14th of November 2021, so just slightly after all-time high, we're sitting at 65,000. Let's have a look at some of the other ones. Yeah, this was what, a $3 trillion market cap at the time, or just under 2.8 trillion. But we're talking about huge numbers here. Now, I know Simon was talking about potentially a top 5 token. Well, that's a 70x from where we are now, just based on if we get to only a $3 trillion market cap. And that's why I just want to put something in kind of its perspective there. Now, it doesn't mean they can't, because when you look at the likes of Doge and Shiba being up there with the size of the market caps that they had, look at Terra as well, then of course these things can. But I don't think it's a slam dunk. And I think, you know, the fact that I kind of said that, yeah, I agree with a low, I think a more realistic target is where the pessimistic side of things are. So that's just where I'm kind of correcting. I will say I am back in Casper to sort of the limit that I want to be at. So we'll see how that one runs over the next few months and maybe a year. Okay, I see some comments flying through. So let's go. Does the fact that a third of all Casper hasn't seen an exchange yet worry you? Yes and no. So I've talked about this before. So let's just bring up Casper up here. So it doesn't matter what token you're talking about. You know, when you've got a market supply, there's a good chance that the vast majority, especially a proof of work token, the vast majority of that market supply, or circulating supply, should I say, has never been on an exchange, because what it has is it's probably been mined, especially when you think about the early life of Casper. There was no ASICs, it was all GPU. So it's probably been mined by people, you know, in their grandma's basement, whatever the sort of the image is that most people conjure for these miners. Bear in mind, I used to do it. And they've just put it in a wallet and they've left it there, and it's just happy to stay there. Of course, though, people are going to trade that. And so of the 21 billion that's out there, a fraction of that is sloshing in and around exchanges. That's the one that's actually getting traded. That's the one that's actually bringing the value. And so let's just pull a figure out at the end and say it's $1 billion worth of token. You know, only $1 billion, so 1/20th of the circulating supply is actually being traded. But that doesn't matter, because the value that is still being reached on that 1 billion, it just then gets applied to the rest of the market cap. That's how it works, not just for Casper, but for every single token out there. You know, you look at Polkadot and the amount of that's been locked up. I think it's 169 million, or it might even be more than that. That might be from the parachains. Has been locked up with staking. You know, so that's not seen in an exchange, but it still gets to count in the overall market cap. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And the fact that Casper holders are willing to hold on to it is another positive. The only thing I'd say, and why I said it's good and a bad thing, is, of course, why wouldn't you hold on to it? All it's done is go up. I mean, it's logical to hold on to it when it's doing that. And we haven't seen I mean, we've seen these dips, of course we have, and I'm sure there's been some sales, but generally it's always gone up. had we see some aggressive drops and some lower highs and some lower lows, it'd be interesting to see what those wallets do and where they are. But a lot of people are going to have been holding. They will have mined it. Yes, it will have cost them, but they'll have mined it when it was low. I mean, I haven't got the emissions schedule up. Let's just go on. We'll do it. What is it? Casper.org. Yeah. I'm going to have a dedicated section to Casper. Right, somewhere in here. About Casper. Is it in the tokenomics? I think it is. Oh, this is tiny. But in the first 16 months, it's 15 billion. That first 16 months of its life, 16 billion. And so what I'm saying, getting at, is that a lot of people would have got this at a very low price. If we just go here, go to Casper, it's Casper. A lot of people have been mining it. I mean, this chart doesn't go all the way. It just goes back to June. You know, a hundredth of what it is at the moment, getting all of those tokens within there. So, you know, they could sell at any time and reap massive benefits. Now, the reality of it is, though, the early day people are probably the people that believe in it the most. I'm sure they're going to hold on to it. I'm sure they see a very positive future for it. But there's going to be some hell of selling pressure later as they do decide to offload it. So any ability you have to monitor large whale wallets that have held for a significant amount of time, that's one of the best indicators you're going to get as to whether or not a major move is coming. If they suddenly start moving them to exchanges, then you know there's likely to be a big sale coming off. So I don't know if there is a way of sort of monitoring them with alerts or whatever, but if there is one, that certainly would be a good way of doing it. Hey guys, will there be a live stream from the trial? I actually don't know. I hope that there was going to be, but I haven't been able to see one. When the trial officially starts, I'll scour the internet to see whether or not there was. I was always under the impression that American courts did live trials, but just the fact that in the jury selection, it might just be because of the jury selection, the judge had banned mobile phones and laptops, made me think maybe there won't be. But I suppose they don't want people tampering with the juries or sort of like, you know, being able to go and do outside research and then passing that information on. So maybe that's just the reason why all of these courtroom dramas and movies are just flying through my head right now of potentially that kind of stuff. Ada has a far bigger community than Casper, though. Yeah, and it's been around the longer. Yeah, absolutely. It's also a better marketing team and also has smart contracts. It didn't have smart contracts to start off with. And there are plenty of crypto projects out there that don't do smart contracts. So can't necessarily write that off, but I get your point. Anybody there? Back or I'm here. Just getting around to getting to your question. Nothing is building yet, it's just some utility like AVAX, well, because of time. Okay, right. So Anita said she was joined because she wanted to talk about profit taking. I did say that I was going to cover it. Anita, I've done one better for you because apparently on Tuesdays I've got nothing better to do than actually create the video. So I've made the video. I've already done it. Here's the thumbnail. So this will be rendering after this call, and I'll get it out a little bit later on. So for those of you that weren't aware, a couple of people have sort of like been pointing in the direction of a video that I made, one of them 2 years ago, another one a year ago or 9 months ago, just about how I managed my portfolios through the last system. I just called it the 3-pot system. So I just thought, right, well, that leads on to a discussion about profit taking. I might as well redo it. So I've redone it. I wanted to get it under 15 minutes. It's not. It's 20 minutes long. Apologies there. But when you're trying to combine two sections, it does take a little bit of time. But yeah, hopefully that will help. Now, the 3-pot system hasn't really changed. And so I don't go into massive detail within there. I just talk about how I'm allocating funds across them and why I have 3 pots rather than one. But for those that can't be bothered to watch the video, totally understand. Basically, I've got a short-term plays pot, which is a very small amount of my portfolio for high risk, small cap, and trading. And the idea of that pot is to just make quick moves to increase my overall pot, if you will, capital, that I can then move to pot number 2. Now, pot number 2 sort of medium-term hold, so projects that I actually believe in and really like the fundamentals of, and I think they're going to provide a good return. So I can guess I've already bought an allocation of those, but then through hopefully success within pot 3, I can buy more of those till I get to a point where I don't want to buy anymore. I can just wait and then start to take profit. And then pot 1 are more the ones I truly believe in. At the moment, it only has 2, Bitcoin and DOT. And they're ones where I'm just sort of sat around thinking, hey, if the global fiat currency does capitulate, like a lot of us think it will at some stage in the next, I don't know, 20 years or whatever, Bitcoin's going to be the main play at the moment. I want to have some Bitcoin in hand. It doesn't mean that that pot doesn't get sold, and it takes a lot more for me to want to sell that. Normally that is held all the way to the end of a bull or bear cycle, or bull cycle hopefully, and then swapped out and rebought back in, but rarely is it actually taken back to cash. And then I go into profit taking, and so there's someone that I follow on Twitter and YouTube, a guy called Market Mobster. He's got a very similar kind of risk category to me, and he's been doing sort of videos, if you will, on his profit taking levels. And actually he uses similar things to I do, previous price action and fib levels. I've been talking about those for well over a year now. It's something that he uses as well. And actually I kind of liked how clean he'd made his charts in doing those. So I've dedicated an entire section. It's a new watch list just over here, profit taking. It's a completely new chart. And I've kind of done the same, keeping it nice and clean, and all that's going to be on here. And I've done it for all of these. It's not in the video, I've not done it for all of them. I've just shown you how I've done it on a couple of them. But what I'll do is, after a couple of days of you guys digesting the video, I'll then post these in the group, but I will keep them updated. And so if anyone's got any questions, because as I say in the video, my thought process will change. It's just written in sand at the moment, but I've got an idea of what my plan wants to be, but that may have to change. And if it does change, I will change it. But I've just, nice simple levels with a bit of rationale on the screen as to why I've chosen those levels and what I want to do for them. And yeah, hopefully that will help. It's just my view. Some of you may be thinking I'm utterly crazy to try and remove, in this instance, potentially up to 40% of my pot before we get to a new all-time high. But I've got some opportunity there. Mo, you're not a fan of Polkadot? I'm thinking it's the one. Well, not the one, but I think it's got a brilliant future. But that's just me, Polkadot Moon Boy. Of course I am. So you can have a look at those. The video will explain how I've chosen these levels, why I've chosen them, but you can already see I'm using fib, and then I'm trying to find areas of confluence with sort of like previous price history. This at the moment is on the weekly, just so I can fit it on the screen, but obviously I drop down into lower levels to try and tidy that up. And then I just pick zones in and around key ones, and for me it's always going to be 382, the 5, or the 618. I might not take all of them each time, but yeah, that's where I'd look to go. So that's really it. And Anita, I know you were looking at it, but for anyone else that's interested, it's there. What I will say is that the cuddle, one of the talks I'm planning on doing is going to be, it's going to have a very significant element within it about profit taking. So there'll be a much more detailed version of that, which will come out, after the cuddle, so sort of maybe end of November. It may even change slightly from this, but if it does, I will update these ones as well. Okay, right. Let me have a quick swig of water, and I think we'll then get into the research token. So this week, well, just to be clear, I'm going to go on a break from research tokens probably for the next 4 weeks, just while I cover Sam Bankman-Fried stuff. If I find that the information isn't taking up that much time, then I might bring a research token in. But last week I asked, of the long list that we've got outstanding, is there any that anyone wanted? And I think the first person to ask was for Render Network. So that's what we're going to cover now, and I'll just find it all and bring it up. As always, I've got a few notes that I've gone and made on the other screen. So if you think I'm looking over there, then just bear with me whilst I'm catching up. I never stick to the notes, so I don't know why I bother writing them, but at least it gives me something to do whilst I'm going through it all. So what is Render Network? Why is everybody, and a lot of people are talking about it? Well, as you can see here, it's distributed GPU rendering on the blockchain, which, I don't really like buzz mission statements like that. But then when I was looking at, well, what sector is it in? Decentralized cloud rendering services. I was like, bloody hell, okay. What's that actually mean? How are we going to break that down? And for me, it's a decentralized peer-to-peer graphics processing unit, so GPU, sort of processing system where effectively people can, it's not rent, people can request any idle GPU time that other people have when not using hardware, so the graphics cards that they particularly have. That's a really poor way of explaining it. But graphics cards, so we talk about things like NVIDIA, which we'll go into a little bit. They produce graphics cards. I've got one in my PC, it's a 3090, which is a ridiculously powerful graphics card for basically just playing computer games on. And so, my computer, one, won't need all of that processing power when I'm, playing or messing around on the internet or whatever. But two, it's my personal computer. I bought the card. Whenever I turn my PC off, it's effectively sitting idle. And so what Render Network are trying to utilize is an opportunity to create a marketplace, I think it's probably the best term for it, for any idling GPU processing power in which people that don't have the hardware can have access to undertake any kind of graphics-based works, particularly rendering. And for those that don't understand what rendering is, like, for me, when I film these and then I put out the content onto the portal afterwards, obviously I do a little bit of editing, just to sort of take out all the ums and ahs and a few other bits. And then I go to render it or to pull it all together and to finalize the final product, sharpen it up, etc. And that's the rendering. And that takes one, time, and two, a hell of a lot of computing power. And these graphics cards, they're one, not cheap, and two, they cost a lot to run. They can be, they can overheat, particularly if you have a lot of them. So then you've got to think about energy costs and everything else to keep them cool. And so, the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't necessarily know, so I'll try and start that again. What you have is a particularly expensive piece of kit, which maybe not utilize that much, and small firms that might need a large amount of those to do the task it is may not be able to afford that hardware, or that funds could be better allocated instead of wasted on hardware, which is only going to be utilized 20% of the time, in actually trying to rent that capability or transfer that service off to somebody else. So I really should have stuck to the notes. Apologies. So Render Network, it's a blockchain-based platform, decentralized network designed to facilitate cloud rendering services for computer-generated graphics. We talked about looking at 3D animations, visual effects, virtual reality, augmented reality, gaming, but also AI, and that potentially could be a huge sector for it. And I'll explain why in a moment. The rendering services, so what we can offer. So it offers a platform where artists, designers, content creators, whoever you want to go, can effectively access high quality rendering services for any projects that they may be undertaking, computer-based graphic projects. They can then use that process to get the final images, 3D modeling or video or whatever it may be, which, as I mentioned, can take an awful lot of computational. That was the word I was trying to think of earlier. That computational resource and also time. It's decentralized, as we said, so it taps into the distributed network, that peer-to-peer kind of side of things. And as I said, there's loads of basement computer enthusiasts or miners or whatever that have the hardware but don't necessarily utilize it all the time. So there's an opportunity for them to make money whilst also providing that service. We're utilizing blockchain technology, which obviously provides some security within that, but the payment and incentive network, it also provides an element of ownership and authorship. Because I suppose, the concern that a lot of people have, particularly with digital-based art, is, it being copied and everything else. Well, because it's done on the blockchain, everything is recorded as to who was the original owner of it, the work that was done, etc. So there's definitely some benefits to it there. Right, but that's all well and good. We'll go through the website a little bit later on. What does it actually mean? What does it actually do? How does it actually work? Well, for me, I think this is probably the easiest diagram. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the diagram. Sorry, I can't do a dark screen one, so you just have to put up with the light there. But effectively, as I mentioned, we may have a user, if you will, someone that needs work done, that has a requirement for a large amount of computational power, but doesn't necessarily have the resources and the hardware to undertake it themselves. So they can then approach the Render Network and they can submit a job. I don't know whether or not they can link it to things like Fiverr or Whatwork or WeWork, sorry, those kind of things. Then the vendor network can effectively evaluate that job, and it can determine how much computational power it's going to take or require to complete the work. And it can then assign that to those that have registered on the vendor network from a computational side of things, so the people who have the idle GPUs. That work, their GPU fires up, undertakes the work. When the work is then completed, that's passed back to the vendor network. The person that's provided the computational power is paid. Now, when I first read through this, I got that they were paid in render tokens, which makes absolutely sense and provides a use case for the tokenomics, so perfect. And then when I read it the second time, there was a question of, yes, they got paid in render tokens, but they might have also been paid in fiat as well. I've not actually logged onto the the website or the notice board to see actually how that works, but ultimately that's how it works. And then, excuse me, the person who requested the job gets the completed work themselves. Now, when requesting the job, they do have to pay for that service in render tokens. So it does make sense in my mind that then the person who completed the job would be paid in render tokens. So I was a bit confused with the cash side of things. I think that might have just been someone misunderstanding it. I didn't really have time to dive into it myself. And simply put, that is how it works. Node operators, they're the people that carry out the works. Okay, that's fine. I think, oh no, that's irrelevant. I'm not going to waste any time. Yeah, that's the one thing that, is key to note. And I think, this is as a good utility or a good project, a real world use case, is this isn't the people, the node operators, the people that provide the computational power, they're doing this with their idle power, so either stuff that they don't use whilst their computer is active, or probably whilst they're not using their PC or bank of PCs, data banks, whatever. And so it's not interfering with their day-to-day running of any operation or whatever it is that they may be doing. This is an additional bonus, which just so happens to meet the primary requirement of the person submitting the job form in the first place. So I think that is a very positive step forward for that. Now, in terms of use cases, I mentioned this before. So obviously anything that's related to 3D graphics, we completely understand how that could be used. I say completely. I understand how it works. Hopefully you guys are along for the ride as well. So whether it's metaverse, whether it is the film and television industry, whether it's artists, and you'll have a look at some of the people that sit on the advisory board. You can see how they've tapped into that. But as I mentioned, one of the big up and coming sectors that they're looking to enter is the AI. And for those of you that aren't necessarily aware, AI needs to be trained, needs to undertake. I'm going to say lessons, but that really sort of dumbs it down. But undertakes, training to be taught how to interact, how to think for itself. And that element of training, even for simple tasks, takes a huge amount of computational power. And this now goes back to the fact that people may not have the necessary GPUs to undertake it. And I'll give you an example. I think Simon's talked about this. Elon Musk recently bought 10,000 GPUs for his Twitter AI, or X AI, I suppose. Now, okay, he's obviously got a lot bigger fish to fry, but 10,000 GPUs is what he's looking at. Interestingly enough, he went on to say that it's actually easier to buy drugs than it is to get your hands on CPUs because of processing chips and all of that kind of stuff. So, one, there is a cost for it, but also two, there's a supply issue potentially as well. So for those that are wanting to work in AI, and you take ChatGPT as an example, the training of ChatGPT for it to sort of be able to understand that and move along, it does take that huge amount of computational power. If you now had a decentralized peer-to-peer network in which you could effectively rent that computational power to undertake the training for your AI before you unleash it to the world, then that's a perfect opportunity. And that is exactly what Render is reaching out to try and tap into. Let's just see where we are. Let's go back to the main website. I don't have a particular... This website was a bit disappointing for me in terms of like trying to find decent information that I could provide to yourself. pretty basic. It's only this page here. Yeah, it has a few little sound bites. But what is interesting, I don't always talk about this, but the team itself, I think, is worth talking about. So we got Jules Urbick. He's the founder of it. Let me just get there. So he had previously founded other companies. So there was one called Lightstage, which basically captures and renders realistic human faces for VFX. But also you can kind of see how maybe there's an opportunity there for that to link that with AI. Anyway, he sold that, but you get the feel that, this guy is a serial entrepreneur. I mean, it says in here, when he was 18, he made the web's first 3D video gaming platform, licensed it, sold it to the likes of Disney, Warner, Nickelodeon, Microsoft, Hasbro, AT&T. This is someone that has 25 years worth of experience within the industry. And he is also the founder of OTOY. Sorry, he's not the founder of that one. Sorry, he works for them as well. OTOY are effectively the parent company of Render. In terms of advisors, we've got J.J. Abrams from Bad Robot, but he's actually a Hollywood director as well. Does things like the Star Wars, Star Trek, a few others. So someone that understands VFX and the importance that they play within the industry. He is an advisor on this team. We've got Brendan Ich, who's the CEO of Brave, as in the rival to Google. We've got Michael Winkelmann, an artist at Beeple. Now Beeple and NFTs, you think about what furore they caused in the NFT surge. And so some important people. And whether you like it or not, Jennifer Zhu Scott, she is a council member for the World Economic Forum. Now, people have very different opinions on that, but if you really want to conquer the world, then unfortunately you may sometimes have to do the dirty with people you don't want to. But it's always nice to at least have someone on your list, board of advisors, who's well positioned within that. The core team, I think we're now getting into. I knew Bijan was going to say something as soon as I mentioned World Economic Forum, but okay, let's just have a look. So that's kind of it with the website. It's a bit bland. It's a bit poor. There is one of these knowledge-based centers in which you can get a bit more information on it. Thankfully, they break a lot of this down in videos, which is quite useful. They're only 2 or 3 minutes long, each of them. So I think it is generally quite good. Now, the Render network, as it says here, was originally conceived in 2009, but it had its ICO back in October 2017, and it went into beta in 2018. However, the token and the project went live for the public, if you will, in 2020. So it's been around for a long time. It's certainly been through one bull market, maybe 2 bear markets. As I mentioned, it's backed by OTOY Incorporates, based out of LA. We've talked about the advisors and effectively how it works. And then it goes into a bit more detail, which I don't really have the time or the inclination to kind of run through in terms of metaverse, AI, how it can work in sort of showcasing visual effects, how it works with sort of graphic effects, etc. And goes through it. You can have a look. There is a white paper, and the white paper goes through everything you'd expect in a white paper. It's fairly easy to read. Not enough diagrams for me, not because I need diagrams to understand it, just because there were some things I was hoping there was going to be diagrams for there. One thing sorry, I just need to have a sip of water. One of the things it does go into is the tiering, the price tier system. And there are 3 tiers of pricing. It kind of explains sort of how they work. And if you go into a lot more of the documentation, it actually gives you kind of like more of a value of how much Render token it's going to be. But it's effectively 3 systems depending on how much work you require doing. So it's at least good to know that there's, avenues for entry. It's not just a ridiculously priced service. You can kind of scale that for your needs. It has, we haven't talked about the tokenomics, but the next bit down here kind of gives it away. But it is a community-based, not community-led, but community-based project. And so there are opportunities to put forward new protocols. One of the protocols that was brought in is NRP, so Render Network Protocol number 1, was a burn and mint equilibrium model. And basically it just provides a consistent price service for what we talked about before. But what it interestingly does provide is an opportunity to have some deflationary tokenomics within it. We'll go through the tokenomics a little bit later on, but suffice to say that with this being approved, creators use 95% of that fiat fee to programmatically purchase render from the distributed liquidity pools and subsequently burn it. So the transaction fee, whatever that cost is, 95% of that can be burnt. The remaining 5% is paid to the foundation as a transaction fee in order to fund the render network operation. So, excuse me, I really can't get rid of this frog in my throat. That's been brought in. Now, again, there are some tokenomics that suggest that there is still an inflationary period at the moment, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. So this is something that they've got the mechanism in there. I'm not saying it's deflationary now, but in the future, long-term future, there's an opportunity for that to become deflationary. So perfect. And if this really does pick up, and some of the partnerships that they're announcing, you'll see how it potentially can, then there is, a huge opportunity for that rate of burn rate to drastically increase. There's some other NRP, so 4.56 million render first year emissions subsequently be removed. Fine. Okay, so it kind of goes through that. This kind of explains how it does. That's the only diagram in it. But that is the white paper. That's what I was looking for. Partnerships. There's one massive partnership which put this on the map for everybody this year, I would argue. And that has been an announcement that's made between Apple, you heard that right, yeah, Apple, and Render, or Octane Render, which is owned by OTOY. Octane Render is effectively a software program that allows users to, a graphical design software package, which is downloadable. But from what I understand, all new Macs and iOS devices going forward will have this pre-installed on their computer or their iPad or whatever. And you think about as I understand it, the vast majority of films and editing stuff in general is generally done on Macs. And so suddenly you've got an enormous potential user base to tap in, and we'll go into it a little bit later. They can be tapped in without even understanding Web3. And what do I mean by that? Here it is. So they have this thing called the RNDR credit. I'll talk about it now. Should probably talk about it after the tokenomics, not to confuse you. So there's credits, they're for people that aren't familiar with the cryptocurrency. And then there's the tokens, which is kind of what you actually need to use. But effectively, the credits is a way for people to utilize the network to get them started, because they still need to have some, they can't take fiat payments, has to be RND of some sort. And so these credits can be purchased on PayPal and Stripe and just then directly used through the portal, as it says here. These credits are backed by the RNDR token and have been purchased off an exchange in the Render team. So it's effectively, you are buying the token, but you don't have to go through having to Binance or wherever else. If you have no idea about how any of that works, you can just go on to rnd.x.io and just buy these credits, which work exactly the same for you. So again, they're trying to make it as easy as possible for people who have no real understanding of Web3 but need the service to be able to utilize that. Obviously, once they get familiar with it, I'm sure they're going to be pushed towards, using the RNDR token itself. But it's just good to see that they've actually already thought about how they can try and maximize their user base straight away. But yeah, that sort of partnership and that agreement with Render really put this one on the map. Had a lot of people talking about that, and it had a pretty interesting impact on the price, which I'll show you in a moment. But to actually have a look at the tokenomics itself, so here it sits, coin market cap. I did check, pretty much the same as CoinGecko, so we can just trust this as best as we can at the moment. It's currently priced at $1.70. It's got a market cap of 631 million, or 32 million actually, which ranks it around about 54. It's got a decent 24-hour volume, talking about 31 million there. And its circulating supply is 372 million tokens, around about 70% of the overall 531 million Render tokens. Now, I did mention that there is some inflationary tokenomics that were proposed, and that potentially can increase that to about another 100 million. So, probably looking at upwards of a total max supply of 635 circa, give or take. In terms of where you can get it from, pretty much everywhere, whether that be DEXs or centralized exchanges. And, you know, it's been around for a while, as I said, so plenty to do. I should have mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on, but it is an ERC20 token. So it's got an Ethereum chain. It's also got a Polygon, and there's potential rumors of movement elsewhere, which we'll go across a little bit later on. The supply, circulating supply, so we can kind of see some step jumps. Unfortunately, I don't have a vesting schedule that I can show you, which is, you know, frustrating because I like to see sort of when we might have potential large increases. But it seems to be, you know, pretty much once a year there's a large step increase, and then there's sort of slower ones there. That's the best information I can get you at such short notice. Hopefully I'll find some more information now, which I can provide at a later date. We've covered the white paper. I haven't been able to find a roadmap, so that's a bit of a cross. In terms of socials, it has been very heavily covered. You know, you just type in render network on the likes of YouTube or Twitter, you're going to find a lot of people talking about it. The render network Twitter or X profile is very active. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of retweets of stuff. I want them to just provide me with information, and it's kind of hard to cut through the shit, if I'm honest. But it is what it is. The only bit of information that I did get on the breakdown of the tokenomics is effectively here. But so the render network tokenomics, it is effectively a utility token. You know my thoughts generally on utility tokens. Most of them just serve as governance and staking. But as we know, this one has proved that it does have a use case for a payment system within it. So as we see here, the RNDR serves as a utility token for on-demand GPU rendering services. Creators pay for rendering jobs with RNDR. We've discussed that. Access to a variety of GPU providers at different levels of speed, security, and price. And that's the tier system that I didn't really go through, but I at least mentioned. It's also a reward mechanism for the GPU providers. So the node operators, as I mentioned, they can use their idling GPU power to render jobs on the render network and earn RNDR tokens in return. The amount of RNDR tokens they earn depends on the rendering job's tier, duration, complexity. Node operators can also stake their RNDR tokens to increase their reputation and access to more rendering jobs. That also serves a dual purpose of, you know, providing that security to the network and everything else that goes with that. And then it's a governance token. So there's some, you know, protocols that you can vote for and put forward. And this is the breakdown, the only breakdown that I found at the moment. So of the 537 million tokens, 40% is for network development, 25% for growth, operations, reserves, and genesis. Now, I don't know the breakdowns of those, and I don't really understand the descriptions beyond those two words for each of them. It'd be nice to know a little bit more about those, but we are where we are with that. Talked about the credit. So let's have a look at price before we go over everything else. And just zoom out. So this is on the weekly chart, just to give you a bit of an idea of where it sits. And so that Apple, well, does anyone want to harbor a guess at when the Apple partnership, in inverted commas, was made? Bang, right here, 27th of December. So the start of this green candle is when it was made. And it took its price from 40 cents to, well, let's just see what it closed at, 170. So, you know, 300% increase over a matter of weeks off the back of that. Yes, it corrected, but it had a fairly decent uplift again on some potentially bullish news about a change of network that it might be moving to away from Ethereum. But you can see that actually, unlike a lot of altcoins that are out there, Render has performed very well this year. And its base was around about 40 cents. That's kind of low it's been. Its all-time high is around about $8, but it's currently sitting at $1.70. So, you know, a fairly decent potential upside even to its all-time highs. Now, what I am seeing, though, which potentially might hesitate what you're doing, is are we seeing the right shoulder of the Head and Shoulders starting to form on the weekly? And if that's the case, will we now see it correct more in line with what the majority of other altcoins have done this year? And we may see it, you know, sub $1. Matter of fact, probably closer to around about 80 cents if that were to play out to its full capability. So it is resting on the 21 EMA at the moment. I think all eyes really need to understand how this is going to close on this weekly candle. Unfortunately, there's still 5 days left of that. Break it down onto the daily though. And yes, it has been trending down since May. But, you know, since beginning of September, we have now started to see, I'm not saying it's a full change of the trend, but it's coming there. We have had the last 2 days, if this candle was to close as it is, two stonking high wicks potentially there, which could suggest that we are looking for a reversal. But if you were the one inclined to think, well, we're currently in an uptick, as small as that may be, maybe you have the opportunity to discount that. But I'm sort of just observing the price at the moment just to see where that one goes. So what's this potential news and why am I being a little bit cagey about it? Well, during me looking into this, people kept on mentioning Solana. And so I found articles back in March of this year. You know, Render Network eyes Solana migration ahead of network changes. People in the governance system are trying to vote or suggesting that they would prefer to move across to Solana, and so accordingly putting proposals through. We have a look at things like Dexter Labs in the day this one, April. They suggest that it is migrating from Polygon and Ethereum to Solana. But I'm sorry, another one here. A render token migrates makes it sound like it's happened to the Solana blockchain. And that was in May. So March, April, and May, a lot of news articles about that. However, you go on the likes of Render's Twitter, you can't find anything there. You go onto Solana, have a look at their news, and over and around that time, there's nothing that seems to be announced. This is their sort of news section to suggest that that is the case. And I would have thought this would be major news, particularly with what Solana, Solana is kind of moving towards AI and that kind of stuff. This would be, a big coup for them, what they're looking to do. I mean, Solana itself has a direct input link, whatever you want to call it, to ChatGPT. So, if they were to confirm that they were going on the Render network, or that was to happen, then I think it's going there. So I'm not saying that it hasn't. I just can't seem to find anything from the two big boys to confirm that that's the case. But from what I understand, people are suggesting that the agreement has been made. They're just waiting for a date for when that transfer is going to come through. What is interesting is at the end of this month, so October 30th to November the 3rd, Solana Breakpoint, which is a bit like Polkadot Decoded. It's where enthusiasts, employees, and developers, etc., of Solana will get together. This is in Amsterdam, and they'll hold a series of presentations and talk about the future of Solana. But what is interesting is the third biggest keynote speaker of it is Jules Urbach, who is the founder of Render Network. So are we actually going to see the announcement made of when the date of that transition over could be? Now, notwithstanding Bijan distrust of Solana, and to be fair, I think a lot of us felt that back in 2022, there is some potential benefits for moving over to Solana. And if we just have a look, transaction speeds. Now, yes, I know Solana, getting to 50,000, 65,000. But if you look at where Ethereum currently sits at the moment, 30 transactions per second versus up to 65,000 transactions per second. I won't even put it out there, except to just put it out there and say that Solana are actually trying to target 6 million transactions per second whenever they get, is it Firebox? Whatever the next sort of leap in their development is. It's Fire something. They're trying to get that to 6 million transactions per second. But you can kind of see, from transaction speed alone, you can understand why we're looking to get there. And if you think about it in terms of sort of costs per transaction, so on the Solana network, it's less than 0.001. So what's just happened there? Let's go back down to that little table. Whereas Ethereum, and by the way, this article was written in May, it's saying cost per transaction is anywhere from 60 cents to $2.70. Now, we know if the Ethereum network is clogged, those prices are drastically higher. And if it fails, you still have to pay the fee. So you can see why the community is so keen to move it away from the Ethereum network. The question really is this just hope Fire Dancer, that's the one. Fire Dancer, that's where they're trying to take it to 6 million. That's what Anteloi Yakovenko, or whatever his name is, claims that it'll be able to get up towards. But anyway, so that's certainly some positives in terms of where that could go, and I can see that being a benefit. Yes, a lot of people still have a bit of distaste around Solana, but if you actually look at Solana's price, which I don't think I have it, Solana as well has performed well-ish, I suppose, recently. We've had, I mean, even if you look, we use market maker, W, 1, 2, 3, coming down here, another W, maybe we'll start to see it, but you can see that it's actually climbed quite well. And if we go back to where it was after the FTX debacle, it was sub 10, and now we're 2.5 times that. So I'm not necessarily saying that I'm all in or even interested in buying on Solana, but it seems to be a network that is still moving forward and obviously trying to shake the taint FTT and FTX came with it. Let me just try and catch up on some here. Website looks like someone just started a GCSE IT course. Yeah, I agree with that. I think community is my least favorite word in crypto. Mine's rebasing down. That's got to be it. Ethereum hasn't still fixed their costing issues. No, it hasn't. So the Shanghai update, the merge, and everything else, they kind of put on the back burner. They wanted to get all of the merge and everything else that was associated with that sorted, and then they openly said that they'll raise other EIPs to try and fix the transaction issues. It wasn't going to be an immediate thing, but it is painful and it is slow compared to a lot of other layer ones out there. It is slow. Yes, it's markedly faster than the Bitcoin network. That's nothing to be proud of. Solana's Visa trial gives hope. Yep. So again, it's not necessarily talking about Visa as Solana, but you're right. They've got something there. So there clearly is some people that are interested in it. Let me just make sure I'm trying to cover it. So benefits. So we talked about the foundation, talked about the strong team. I think that's clear. Just the use case, the ability for people to have access to this element of service without requiring the expensive and labor-intensive hardware that's required to purchase and then run and maintain the equipment. It's got to be a big benefit there. AI usage, that training of models we kind of talked about. Ecosystem, so where they're looking to go into. So I've talked about film, TV, music, metaverse, AI, artists, but with that training side of things, the sciences can utilize that. Architecture can utilize the rendering software. Medical side of things is so. In terms of a potential use case and ecosystem, it's definitely got it out there. We talked about the blockchain effect and allowing that ownership and authorship of works throughout the process, which is good. And then we talked about the mitigation of Solana network. Drawbacks. I mean, there's always going to be drawbacks on these kind of things, and I'm sure I could find a lot of them if I dug a bit deeper. I think the one biggest thing for me is just the sector it's trying to disrupt. We look at NVIDIA. This is kind of like a double element. But you look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA has been ripping over the last year. Okay, it's gone from a low of 100 to a high of nearly 500. So it's 5x in the space of 12 months. And, that's because of demand and the requirement there is for it. Now, the video have made some pretty not gutsy calls, but pretty firm decisions. So they were very synonymous with crypto mining equipment. They've made a decision actually not to focus on that in the short term. They're going to move more into the AI world. But these guys are a force. They're a monster company. And, Render Network is here to disrupt them. It's basically to say, okay, guys, yeah, we like what you're putting out there, but we're going to try and reduce the demand. People are still going to need it. We're going to try and take that level of demand away from you. And I just wonder what NVIDIA's answer is going to be in the long term and how they're going to try and combat that. Maybe they do a partnership with them. Maybe they buy them out. I don't know. But I kind of see that as could definitely be a drawback in terms of just trying to disrupt such a behemoth. But it does happen. So conclusion time then. I actually really like it. I do. I must admit, I think there's definitely some potential here. I like the partnerships. I like the team. I like that it has a genuine reason to exist with a use case and an ecosystem, which one can see why it works now, but two, they're tapping into potential game-changing narratives for the next bull run, AI, metaverse, everything else. So I like it. I like the fact that they have the opportunity to be utilized by people who have no idea about Web3 and not necessarily have an interest within that, but can still benefit from this. So they're not just focusing on those that are into crypto and cryptocurrency. So yep, really positive there. Have I bought any of it? No, I haven't. Is it on my watch list? Yes, it is. I will add this, I believe. I'll probably add it to the pot too. So I know, maximum 5% portfolio will potentially go into it. But it's got some huge upside there. It's ranked at 54 at the moment. It's around about 4 or 5x off its all-time highs. But I think, with some of the narratives and the sectors it can tap into, I can easily see, a positive market, a bull market is what I mean by that. And then also the narrative of some of these sectors, gaming, metaverse, AI, whatever, also picking up. I can really see the price of this lifting. So kind of be foolish not to get in. And I just want to see how this head and shoulders plays out, really. And maybe just sort of sitting on my hands and just waiting for that to I think, and yeah, just see how that plays out. Sit on my hands, but yeah, I'll look at try and identify some buy levels. And that's it for render. Thanks for that one. I hope it helps. I'd heard people talk about it. I'd never bothered to look into it, but I'm happy that I held off because if I'd looked into it in June, I might have been paying $1 extra for it. So I don't think that's too bad a potential wait there. And that's it on that. Just down. Bring this other one back up. And yeah, I think we're kind of now just getting into just having a bit of a better look at price discussions. And God, I do sound like a broken record because I think we've been talking about this now for about a month, if not longer. But on the one day, and we'll break it down to lower time frames to try and see where we're going. I still see that rise 1, rise 2. I'm still wanting this rise 3 and kind of into a correction now. Sorry, this was rise 3 and potentially drop 1, and then we're just looking at the other side of a rise. And we climbed up here, but we were rejected right at that level. And I'll zoom in. We got as high as these wicks down here before we were pushed back down. And at the moment, we're now kind of getting squeezed between, on the daily, look at this, the 800, the 200, the 50, the 5, and the 10 are all within $1,000 of each other. So there's a huge amount of pressure there on the price. And although we climbed out of it on Sunday, never trust the weekend, and on Monday it's corrected back under the 800. There's a lot of people still talking about the death cross. But look, death cross occurred, and then it's now about to the cross again. So, as I mentioned, when we get to this kind of flat stage just prior to the bulls, the halvening, I don't really put too much stock necessarily into them. But I do feel like we are getting to a point where we are in this pressure cooker. All of these EMAs converging on them, pushing the price, squeezing it in. It's going to act like a spring. So I do feel that there is a large move coming. And it's just a case of which way is that going to go? Now, yesterday, the word of the day was October. I don't think people are talking about October too much anymore. But historically, end of, and they call it the Halloween effect, certainly in the traditional markets. And it's because from Halloween onwards. So you could argue that that's really November and December. So October, we may actually see as a bit of a month of just sort of moving around. And as Bijan's put there, stop hunts, just market makers manipulating the price to try and just take out positions. And I think it was $172 million worth of liquidations occurred yesterday. So, it's a lot of people thinking it was going to go lower and they got taken out. We'll have a look at high block in a bit. But yeah, unfortunately, we're just still within this position. Now, The only other thing that I could see is that this wasn't drop one. This was like this was peak 3, but this is the downward bit before we get the M, and then we go again. Because at the moment, this M is kind of like that. Some overlapping. This M is kind of like this at the moment, which I went with that just because of the move away from the 50. It just seemed like that was the M. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe, we need to just say, actually, we've got this. We need another leg up. And, if it was, I'd like us to think that we would retest at least 30,000 and then come back down. So get to the top side of these candles here and then fall back down. If we're using the market maker on the daily, we're talking about things that take 6 months, 4 to 6 months to play out. So the fact that we've stalled here for 2-3 months of this top bit doesn't necessarily mean that we're necessarily wrong. But until we break and close above 29 to 30,000, I'm going to stick. I might be wrong. It's not the first time. I'm going to stick with that. And this is just a consolidation period before another move down. And that's, where we will go, but it will just take some time. Like let's just say move 2 happens tomorrow, and then we've got that consolidation period. That could easily now take us to sort of middle of November before the final move down, sort of, towards the back end of the year, and we start to build up. We consolidate, start to build up before the halvening, and off we go. So that certainly plays out like that. We try and break it down into some lower time frames. Oops, 4 hour. So I'm just going to squeeze it this way just so I can try and see what's happened. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a bit confused as to where the 4 hour sits, because you can make the case for this sort of climb back down and it's similar to the daily, but then, is this a W? But if we went onto the hourly, we might be looking that actually we're in. I should do some of this ahead of time. So is this some form of sort of W here? Rise 1, pull back, rise 2, pull back, and we've got a third rise to come. I mean, if you have a look at sort of the movements away, I can see that one. It pulls back down, consolidates under the 50, bursts back above it, and it's come back down. Over a bit of consolidation before that final move back up. On the hourlies, it happens quicker, and it may not go as far, but certainly something to have a look about there. Let's have a look at some others. Dot and alts. I mean, again, on the hourly, we're on. A lot of tokens had this move in September and into October, the move up, but it has recovered that, or retraced, shall I say, back down, and we're kind of just sitting back in that range that we've been in for a while. So most of September has seen us down in this low $4 area. So yeah, I'm still put it on the daily. I'm still looking at trying to get another section of my portfolio for DOT in around about this level, so between 170 and 180. I think we retest that. I think that's fairly logical kind of conclusion there. And actually, if you look at the daily, where did this get back up to? We haven't retested the 50 in a while. It's gone and hit that 50 perfectly and rejected from it. I mean, I don't really do many shorts at the moment. It would have been an ideal opportunity had we been watching that as a great entry place for that. But yeah, that's what's happened. And now we're closing below the 5 and the 10, which we've seen in the past has, generally kept us in. So this is going to down trick back down. We're going to go there, unfortunately, but that is where it sits. Ethereum, very similar. I mean, this one climbed above it, but got caught out by the 200. And then it's pushed back below the 50. So again, we're below the 50 there. BNC, I mean, they all kind of look the same, unfortunately. Glimmer, interesting. Okay, so we got that monster move up over 50%. Into the shorts. Some of you might still be in your shorts within that, and we've nicely pulled that back. Now, what did we get to? We got to 28 from 16, so it's 12, so 6. So we've done a 50% retracement at the moment. We are currently sitting above the 50. However, for me, I do think this is going to go back down to at least 16. We've got more unlocks come in. The rest of the altcoin narrative seems to be going there. And although they've made some decent strides and some decent partnerships and announcements over the last few days, I don't see that overtaking the narrative of how it's pushing it down. Now, I'm still very bullish on Glimmer from a fundamental point of view. The technicals don't look great, absolutely. But this is such an incredibly worked on network. The amount of development that's happening in a bear market under such price suppression, I just feel this will be a monster coiled spring. And when we start getting that, and the narrative shifts, and then people start to take into account fundamentals and what it's actually achieved, it will be able to say, we have done all of this whilst everyone else was running for the hills and laying people off and having to slow down their roadmaps. We just kept on delivering, and I think that's going to pay dividends for it. So I'm happy with where it sits at the moment, but I need to sort of look into that a little bit further. Link. So as everyone knows from last week, I got out. I never bought back in down here, and it shot back up. But as expected, it's kind of hit that level it's always hit. For the last year and a bit. Oops, I didn't draw that one very well. Looking at the wrong one. And it started to come back down. So I will look to re-enter. We get back down to sub $6, and I'll just try and ride it again the next time. So we sold last time here. Try and ride it back up next time, and just slowly build the bags. Matic, yeah, they're looking like a lot like the rest of the alts. Near again, looking pretty painful. Straight to the 50. Just one thing for Near. If any of you are staking it through a Near wallet, web wallet, you need to update that by the 31st of this month. If you just go onto the website, there's a little wizard. I think you have to unstake everything first. I've just unstaked mine, so it's going to take me 72 hours before I can then do anything with it. But once that's done, I'm then going to just follow the wizard to then move across. It's nothing necessarily too onerous. It's just the fact that they, the web address that they're utilizing for the wallet, they're going to, how can I set this? So when they created it, it was just one wallet that you could use, but now they're going to have like as I understand it, options of different wallets that you can then use, but they have to effectively unstake it, remove it from its current domain, and then move that across. So it says it's a fairly painless operation. You've got to the end of the month. I'll do it before the next Avenger call, and so I can explain to any of you that do have any Near how painful it was and if I've lost it all. Luckily, I have 3 separate wallets, so if it goes really badly on one of them, at least I've got the other 2. OKB is kind of, this one hasn't really done anything. And it's just, this is an exchange one for those of you that don't watch it as much. And unlike the rest, which have had that sharp move recently, it's just kind of stayed. It's just getting squeezed and squeezed. Similar to Bitcoin, a lot of these EMAs are coming pretty close to each other. So we shall have to wait and see. I actually sold all of this. I don't know what it was, somewhere up here. I sold the rest, so it's around about 44, I think. So I do want to get back in. My worry at the moment is he's squeezing it does another move up, and like what happened with Link. So just need to bear that in mind. Quant's coming down nicely at the moment. I see further falling. I think not sure whether or not we'll get down to here, but if we can get down to 70, between 70 and 65, pretty decent entry to sort of where we saw the deep part of the bear market in 2022. But yeah, this one seems to have done like everything else. It's broken that sort of support level of around about 100, which it held for freaking ages. It's come back down. It's only natural that it was going to retest, but that looks to be continuing down with the rest of the market. Oh no, it's there because I haven't bought it. That's why. Total market cap. So it's including Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything else. I mean, not necessarily too much to say about that. I suppose the only positive we've got here is the fact that, yes, price broke above, but at the moment, it's holding both the 50 and the 5 and the 10. It's holding above those. It's been squeezed today. If we can get a few days holding above that, then maybe we might see some sustained pressure. But I think it's going to be hard pushed without a decent change in narrative to get above, sort of, let's just say 114 to 120 and take out this block here. Maybe we'll get some surprise ETF announcements, etc. That might be able to drive us that way. Total 3, which is basically the altcoin market. I don't know why they don't save, because I draw these pretty much every time. We break below that. And whilst I won't sell because a lot of them are staked, that's pain. You know, we lose 280, 290. That's painful, unfortunately. And then, you know, we really need to be breaking now above 400. And you look at the 800 there as well. So we're above the 50. We've got to break the 200. Got to break 350 from a psychological and a price action level. It's a decent amount around about there. Zoom in for everyone, but just look at all of these support and resistance levels. Break that, and then we've got to break this large chunk here. So a lot of work in the alt markets, and that's shown down in the dominance. You can see here. Actually, today's looking fairly decent for some. Matic up 5%. It's actually up. See that today. Must have skipped over Matic. Matic's bucking the trend. So yeah, it did what everyone else did over the last 48 hours, but today it's recovered all of that. So it's still sticking its 5% move. But okay. So beginning of September, I kind of talked about, you know, I'd sold some stuff in August so that I could wait for the red September, which actually didn't happen. We were 5% up in September, remarkably, or 4%. And I said that, you know, in the month of October, I'm going to be looking to just get the majority of my position in. And that's still going to be the case. Yeah, I understand that there may be, you know, further bleeding to happen, but I'm just playing the history of where things are going in pre-halvening years. And it just feels like putting the majority of the rest of my portfolio in at these prices. So I can dollar cost average down some of the entries that have been higher. But I'll still keep a little bit on the side, that pot 3 I talked about in the video, which, you know, I may have to utilize. I think I want to try and fill a bit more Bitcoin and maybe just try and take a bit of a Bitcoin play before moving some of it in. But I do see me moving to probably around about 90+% portfolio back in by the end of October. Just don't know when I'm going to necessarily do that. I've not really had a decent look in the charts. That's kind of it for me. A little bit quicker than usual. That's deliberate, I'll be honest. I'm conscious that we've got the merge with the other group potentially happening in, you know, sort of the next month or so, and the amount of content you guys are going to get is going to be, you know, 5-6 days a week. And so really I'm thinking, as much as I've enjoyed sort of Tuesday nights 2 hours and then a Thursday, you know, 2.5 hour trading pub as well, is that just a bit too much? And so I'm going to try and condense everything down. With that in mind, though, if you guys have, if you guys got any feedback in terms of how I can tidy this up, or new things you'd like me to bring in, more than welcome to listen to any of that, and you know, try and take all of that on board. I don't think there's any questions. Oh, wait a second. Let's have a look. There are a few. Do you see further falling in the S&P 500? I think that looks there. We kind of covered that at the beginning. It is a lot of red, and I know what you mean with China markets pushing that. And Sam kind of mentioned that if you take away the top 7 assets in the S&P over the last 12 months, they're the ones that have been pushing that up. So the fact that they're starting to stagnate, we're just entering into Q4, so we're going to get some Q3, reports out soon. So it'll be interesting to see how people have done with that. But yeah, I think, you know, we are getting to that point where, yeah, the US government, from a debt ceiling point of view, and, you know, where we are with interest rates, and we had an announcement today that one of the members, yeah, from MC was suggesting that we'll probably only get one rate cut next year, and that'll probably be towards the back end of next year. So maybe we're looking at a sustained period of these high level of interest rates, which, you know, is never great. But at some stage, you're going to have to turn the money printer back on. You know, that's the reality. And, you know, with where Bitcoin's poised at the moment, halvening, and that, you know, they could be a perfect marriage like it was back in 2019, 2020. Not that I want a pandemic and lockdowns to be the catalyst for that, I'll be honest. Uniswap now and Glimmer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great move. I don't really use DEXs, but, you know, who cares about me personally? The fact that we're opening up, you know, the most widely used decentralized exchange now on Moonbeam, perfect. Nasdaq looks iffy too. Yeah, head and shoulders. Okay, that's on Nasdaq. Oh yeah, head and shoulders. See that there, and probably diagonal support that you're talking about, Greg. Maybe something like that. you know, head and shoulders broken through. I'm sure that's what you're saying. It's come back at COVID and rejected. So definitely could look like that. Similar argument can be made for the S&P. I've just realised I've not been sharing my screen for me talking through those, so apologies there. That, Greg, was what I was trying to illustrate what you had suggested. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, down and up. So, yeah, apologies there. Right. That's it for me then, everybody. Nice little faux pas at the end, but it was obviously going too clean. I didn't get any questions on the portal, so if you do have any, you know, please fire some across. You know, last week it was good to try and spend a bit of time answering some of your questions. As I said, unlikely to do another research token next week because I'm going to try and focus on the SPF. But if it isn't enough, I'll just go on the next one on the list that interests me. And other than that, gents and ladies, hope you have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And if nothing else, I shall speak to you all soon. Cheers now.